I could also resend to anyone a link of a actual hard copy book if you prefer, that I would be happy to recommend which one I've been using. Right now in front of me, I have two different ones that I like to use. I have a Pirkei Avot. This is the Weiss edition. It's very friendly, kid-friendly. It's like easy to read. The text is actually the same of the one that we studied together. And it has some basic commentaries with a cute story or two. Then I also have a little more of an in-depth one. It was actually collected, the author is a Chabad rabbi that's a good friend of mine in San Mateo. He's a dear friend of mine. So he collected a bunch of commentaries and put it together in a compilation, a book. And so that's another good one as well. Oh, the one that Jolie is holding up. Awesome. Yes, that's the one. And Debbie, it's half there. You're pretty good. You're like almost magical. You're able to make it disappear. But I can see it kind of. Awesome.
Oh, there it is. It's Rabbi Yankowitz.
Okay, sounds good.
Louis Yankowitz, he's local here.
Awesome.
It just came out a couple of years ago.
Cool. All right, support local. We're into that.
Rabbi Landa?
Yes.
If you could actually send the link information to get the hard copies.
Yep, with pleasure. Cool. I'll send you both, and I recommend both of them, so I don't have one over the other, but I will be happy to send.
Thank you.
Share a link. And hello, Sandra. Great to have you join. Hi, Peter. Hello, Robin. I don't think I welcomed you before, so great to see you.
Thank you.
We'll start with just a little thought of Sphira as we're counting the Omer all the way leading up to Shavuot, coming up in exactly a month, actually. So today would be 23 days, which are 3 weeks and 2 days of the Omer. The character trait, according to the Omer that we're working on, is Gevura of Netzach, which means discipline within endurance. So the dominant character of the week is endurance, perseverance. In Hebrew, that's called Netzach, which literally would actually mean victory. But now we're focusing on the detail of discipline within endurance. While that sounds a little lofty, just the thought of the Omer count is examine the discipline of your endurance. Endurance must be directed towards productive goals and expressed in a constructive manner. So the discipline of endurance is making sure you have a set goal and you're expressing it in a manner that is built, constructive, and directed to achieve a goal. And the questions for the week is my endurance and determination focused to help cultivate good habits and break bad ones? Is it the other way around? Does my endurance come from strength or weakness? Actually, wouldn't know what that means. How does endurance come from weakness? What does that mean? Does my endurance come from strength or weakness? I don't know, Tessa, do you know what that means?
Well, I'm thinking about that. I think you just let it get you down, and that's what you're just enduring and not fighting back. So you're enduring, but it's not there's no positivity bias involved when you're enduring from a place of weakness.
Beautiful. So I like that.
You don't see anything good in it, as opposed to when you're enduring from a place of strength. God gives you the wherewithal to continue on, even if you do have bad days. You know that tomorrow's going to be better.
I like that. Beautiful. So,
and I'm using the same little.
Nice.
It's my favorite.
Awesome. So I have it right here also. Thank you. And if anyone wants, I could also add this to a link. And I've been enjoying it. Thomas actually on Shabbos told me he's enjoying it also. I think on Amazon it's maybe $12 or $13. You could also pick one up from us. We would be happy to lend it to you, or if you would like to purchase it. Another question: does it come out of deep conviction or out of defensiveness? Ooh, that's a good one. You could have endurance, but out of a place of defense. The ideal should be coming out of a place of conviction. So the discipline is to really channel and to direct. Am I tenacious out of stubbornness and unwillingness to acknowledge errors? Am I invested in certain decisions and unwilling to review them? Do I use my endurance against itself by being tenacious in my lack of determination?
That's me.
What like Cheryl? Can you explain the last one? Because I don't fully understand that one either.
I had that's probably because you don't suffer from it. So I had a goal. Ken and I are up in Lake Tahoe, and
oh, nice.
Thank you. Yeah, we had a lovely day today skiing. But
there's still snow.
There's enough snow at Squaw Valley, and they're still open, and it's amazing.
That is amazing. Wow. Okay, beautiful.
It's really great. Nobody there, and just us. And
wow.
Yeah, pretty much. Anyway, so for me, I came up here with a goal, a lofty goal of working on my taxes, and I made sure it was clear that I needed to do that, and I was really determined to do it. And I spent 2 days home, one day doing paperwork and the next day preparing for the taxes, but I got waylaid with a desire for something else to fill its place. So that's typical for me, that something else will take my attention away from the goal.
Uh-huh. Okay, so the exercise for the day, Cheryl, is break one bad habit today.
Right.
That's the, okay, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing and being vulnerable on that. And all right, let's get into the study. We're on Pirkei. Oh, yes, of course. Hi, Fred.
I read I counted the 23rd last night.
Yes. So it's in Novato, it's still before sundown. So we're still counting. Today still works on the previous day. We're so confusing us Jews. It's tonight will be tomorrow. Today is still last night. So something like tomorrow morning in the Tanya class, I'll share tomorrow's. And actually interesting, just according to Jewish law, I wouldn't even tell you what tonight's is without saying the blessing first. So when I daven the evening prayer after the class, I'll be doing the Omer count for the night. Awesome. Okay, but thank you for that.
Hello.
Yes, did someone else have something to share? No? Did I miss someone? Okay. I'm just gonna mute you for a moment, if that's okay. There we go. Okay, cool. So if it's okay with everyone, I'll just be pulling up the screen and we'll take turns and read and share as we go along.
This is Sapari. He's going to put something on this. Oh,
okay. So Vivian, you have your text there, I think. Let me just get to the top of the Mishnah. Okay, so we are in chapter 3. Howard, I have you first on my screen. I hope it's zoomed in well enough for you. I will just tell you.
Can I defer to my wife?
Oh, no. For sure, of course.
No?
No.
Okay, I can't defer to my wife.
I can't pronounce that first name.
I'm on my own. Okay.
Actually, I'll just tell you a little bit.
Worse than at the Seder, the paragraph
that was pretty.
So his name is Akavia ben Mahalel. And the commentary right away says who he was. He was actually a contemporary of Hillel. So the great Hillel had a colleague whose name was Akavia. And what's interesting is he doesn't have a rabbi title. And according to a Jewish tradition, the higher and loftier the person was, the less title they had. So it's just an interesting thing. It actually fits well with kind of the Hasidic style in the Chabad world. When I learn from great teachers, a lot of times they don't want to be called Rabbi so-and-so. We call them Reb, like just a little humble title. One of the greatest teachers of Chabad, he was the main scribe of the Rebbe's writings, which means the Rebbe, for the most part, didn't write anything down. He spoke on Shabbos or at a regular weekday Farbrengen, and especially on the Shabbos ones, which there was no recording, he would remember it all because you can't jot anything down. And after Shabbos, he would write it down. So he's a giant. Thank God he's over 90 now, and he actually had COVID, but thank God he's well and he's still teaching. He doesn't go by any fancy title, by his last name. We just call him Reb Yoel. He's one of the greatest teachers in the Chabad world. It's just an interesting, humble way of referring to each other. Just an interesting story. The Rebbe's mother obviously had great respect for her son, and her name was Rebbetzin Chana. My daughter is named after her. And also she had great respect for her deceased husband. Her husband, the Rebbe's father, died while in exile in Kazakhstan, actually, is where he was sentenced to 5 years of exile for the crime of being a rabbi. And his name was Rabbi Levi Yitzchak. And the years after he passed away, one of the Hasidim who knew the Rebbe's father went to visit the Rebbe's mother and was sharing a story about the Rebbe's father. And he referred to the Rebbe's father as Reb Levik, which was his nickname. And the Rebbe's mother got very offended. Like, you don't call my husband on a first name basis. And later, I guess it was explained that amongst Hasidic circles, that's how we refer to each other. It was just a very interesting, she forgave him. It was just an interesting story. But over here, you see that the Hillel, Shammai, and as a Kavya, the person over here, he didn't have a title going with his name. And it just says, I'm just reading from the Talmud, it quotes over here, that during the holidays, the courtyard of the temple was packed with people. There was all the Jews. It was what we call the pilgrimage. They would come to the temple to offer their offerings and to be part of the worship and the celebration in the temple. It says that of all the people crammed in the temple during the holidays and offering the Paschal lamb on Passover, there was never anyone present who was as great as a Kavya in wisdom, purity, and piety. So there was the giants of the Jewish world, the Sanhedrin, the Supreme Court in the temple, and the highest of them was this man that we're gonna learn a lesson from. His name was Akavya. Akavya ben Mahalel. Am I right, Howard? We'll defer to you.
Okay.
I hear him.
Are we starting?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Akavya ben Mahal said, "Look at and consider these three things at all times, and you will not come to commit a sin. Know where you came from, where you were going, and before whom you will eventually have to give justification and a detailed report of everything you did during your lifetime." Mishnah explains, where did you come from? The body begins growing from a spoiled drop of fluid in the mother's womb. Where are you going? You will eventually die and go to a grave, a place full of dust, worms, and maggots. Before whom will you give a detailed report? Before the Supreme King of all kings, the Holy One, blessed be he.
Wow, so a pretty heavy Mishnah. A couple things that stand out, and of course, if anyone has anything that they would like to share, the English, the way they translate it is just making a detailed report or an accounting. More specific in the Hebrew, I'm just going to highlight the words in the Hebrew. It says, din v'cheshbon. Din in Hebrew means a judgment, and a cheshbon means an accounting. Meaning you're going to have to give a judgment and a reckoning, an accounting, a report of everything you've done. It's just interesting. The wording says judgment and accounting. Usually there's an accounting, a report, and then there's a judgment that comes after that. Yet over here, the wording is first the judgment, and then the cheshbon, then the accounting. So the commentators explain that the way the report is kind of filed on high, when a person reaches the age of 120 and their soul goes up to the heavenly court, they actually don't judge that person directly. They ask him, what is the law on such and such circumstance? If a person did such and such, what would you rule? Both positively or negatively. If a person gave charity, or if a person ignored the poor and the orphan, etc., they ask the person, what would you rule? And the person would pass judgment and say such and such, the person is meritorious or the person is guilty. So without knowing it, the person is already making the judgment before even the accounting was done. So that's just the expression why the judgment is already there from before even the accounting is completed on high. The Hasidic terminology of this, we can't go through this Mishnah without understanding a little bit of the Hasidus behind this. The original wording, he says, in Hebrew, the first thing, know three things, then you won't come to sin. The first thing is you shall know from where you come. And then he continues, where do you come from? From, like Howard said, a putrid drop. But more specifically, the way the Rebbe's learned this is just these three words. Literally, what it would mean is, da, you shall know, me'ayin bata. You come from a place of ayin. Ayin, according to the Kabbalistic dimensions of Torah, Ayin is an incredibly high level. Literally, Ayin means nothing, from nothing. Ayin is actually where we all come from. We all come from nothing. We are an existence. We are created beings. But where do we come from? From a place that we can't describe, from nothingness. We come from God. Like we all know, none of us could create something from nothing. The only one that could create something from nothing is God. We always manufacture things. We have one thing and we produce it to be something else. But everything comes from something else. Everything is from something. The true nothing is only from God. So over here it's saying, you shall know that you come from nothing, a place of nothingness, which is referring to the loftiest spheres of the heavenly courts, of the heavenly chambers. So Da'am Ayin Basa is actually just reminding you, you shall know that you come from the highest of places. Earlier today, I was speaking to a younger fellow and he was so hard on himself. He's such a good guy. He's good looking. He has a job. He's respectful to his parents, and he was so hard on himself. And it was an interesting conversation. But I told him, you're gold, not only because of your career and just because you have an neshama. You come from the highest source of God. And we
is he single?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I said, is he single?
He is single.
But yet
nowadays,
like...
Debbie, the matchmaker actually it pays pretty well, they say.
Okay, I made to your list.
So anyway, that's great. Thank you, Debbie. So does anyone have anything else that they would like to share on this Mishnah that stands out?
Yeah, Rabbi, at first, before you gave your explanation of ayin, of nothingness, I was saying to me, when I first read it, it was amazing. Somebody who starts as a putrid drop and winds up in a place full of dust worms and maggots, even that person can go stand before God and give an accounting of himself.
Tessa, that's beautiful. You're right. And even, wow, he's coming from there, he's going to there, but still he has his moment in front of Hashem, in front of God.
But yet to me, it sounds like when you say you're coming from Ayin, means you're coming from nothing, from nowhere.
You're saying that as a negative.
Yeah, right.
I look at it as a positive because I like to think of God as the Ein Sof.
Right. Beautiful. Wow. Tessa, you must be learning with some great teachers. Just to hear that word, that's beautiful. Ein Sof means the infinity, the infinite light of God. Now, anything that is indescribable, like when you have an experience that is just, you can't put it into words. It was too good of an experience, too delightful, pleasurable. You lose the ability to even describe it. So the infinite light of God is that place of nothingness. We can't describe it. We can't see it. We can't touch it. We can't express what it is. We could feel it, but it's nothing. And that's where we come from. So Peter, it's actually, I think the Mishnah could be multifaceted. You could learn it both ways. We come from nothing, meaning it's a negative, but I think the driving force of inspiration in this Mishnah is looking how great we come from. We come from a place that's indescribably high, a place of true nothingness. It's not tampered by any off topic, but Rabbi Manis Friedman, he's an amazing a teacher of Chabad, in the Chabad world. We actually invited him to speak here. This was back in 2014. But he gave a talk called "How to Like the People You Love." You could watch him on YouTube. He's very, very he's a great speaker. Anyway, he's a great. He gets you to think a lot. And one of his talks, he says that as a kid, he would always ask his grandmother, or something like that, what happens in the bedroom. You want, like, as a curious little pisher, he wanted to know what goes on in the bedroom. And his grandmother would always answer, nothing. And the truth is, he says in his talk, she's right. There was no thing. There was no external things that would take place other than the true love between the spouses, between the husband and the wife. There was nothing in between. There was nothing distracting them. There was no, nowadays, there's no screens on. There was no phones on. It was just them. There was no thing. There was no distraction. And the same thing over here, we get that ability, like Tessa saying, to be in front of God, which is where we come from, that indescribable light of infinity. And that's where we come from, and that's where we go back to. So it's just interesting. I see parallels. I see both sides of this in the Mishnah. On one hand, it's saying you're going to a place full of dust and worms, and you come from a putrid drop. On the other hand, it's saying you're standing in front of the King of Kings, and you come from the highest lofty place. And I think it's so beautiful in Judaism. I think I mentioned this in a previous class. One Mishnah is talking to a few students, a few people at the same time. There are some people, like I told you today, a person who's struggling with their self-esteem, suffering. Who are they? They look at themselves in the mirror and they want to throw up. And unfortunately, there are people like that, and people that we know, and we need to lift them up. So on that, it's saying, Kavya is telling us, you should know you come from the infinity. You come from you're gold. But on the other hand, a person may say, oh, wow, look who I am. No one can stand in my way. I'm the top. I'm my own success. Everything comes from me. Don't get too high on your horse. Know that you're going back to a place of earth, and you're giving a report in front of God. I think and even just from a little bit more from the Rebbe's teaching, just each line could stand on its own. When it says you should contemplate 3 things at all times, and it continues to list the 3 things, that itself, just that sentence, you should know 3 things. Even that is describing the student who feels, I don't need anything in the world. I have me and I have God. I have God and I have me with the Torah. That's all I need. I'm going to seclude myself, insulate myself, go in my cocoon, and not really involve myself in the world. And on that, Akavya is saying, no, that's a sinful thing. You want to not sin, you have to have 3 things. You have to have God, you have to have you, and you have to have the world. You can't exclude the world from your existence. You have to be out there in the world. Don't hibernate in a cocoon of Torah and say, that's who I am for life. You would need to be involved in the world. So I think it's multifaceted, where Akavya is going through different styles, different characters of people. For the person with low morale and no self-esteem, he's saying you're gold. For the person that has too high of an ego, he's saying you're going to dirt and worms. And for the person that's secluding himself as a Torah scholar and saying, I don't want anything to do with world, he's saying you have to have 3 things. So I just see a lesson of, and that's a little more of a speech over here based on the Rebbe's teaching, but I couldn't hold it in. So
it sounds like we can take this 2 ways. We're at a very high plane because part of God is in us. And on the other hand, we come from a putrid drop. And I've always read it the way that seemingly negative way. So right. It's interesting to hear the other perspective.
Thank you. I'm glad. And really, I've shared this before. It's almost like you have to have both cards. The card that I am worth the entire world, and right. The card that says I am nothing but dust and ash, which is both expressions from the Torah. But you have right. to know when to pull it out. When you're feeling like nothing, God says you're gold. You should know, pull out the card that says the whole world was created for me. But there are right. times when you feel too high on yourself and too cocky, and then you have to pull out the other one. Don't get too high on yourself. Realize where you're coming from and where you're going.
Yeah, that's very nice. I remember learning it's like in one pocket, it has one of those sayings, and the other pocket, the other.
Awesome. Okay. Barbara, are you comfortable to read? Let me get back to you. I think you're kind of hard. I have to go up on the screen to find everyone. Awesome.
Rabbi Hanina, the head assistant of the high priest, says, pray for the well-being and success of the government, because if not for fear of government, people would swallow each other alive.
And I'm just going to pause. I'm going to let Barbara finish the Mishnah. There's a lot that goes on in this Mishnah. So I'll let Barbara read it. But then there's some verses, and you'll see as it goes along. Just everyone remember one point of it and share whatever you would like on the Mishnah. But we'll let Barbara go through the whole Mishnah first. Go ahead.
Okay. Rab Chanina ben Teradion says, if 2 people sit together and no words of Torah discussed between them, it is considered to be a gathering of jokers, and God does not dwell there. As it says in Psalms, a righteous person does not sit among a gathering of jokers. But if 2 people sit together and words of Torah are discussed between them, the divine presence rests among them. As it says in Malachi, Then the people who fear the Lord spoke words of Torah to one to another, and God paid attention and heard, and their words were written in a book of remembrance before him in order to reward those who fear the Lord and think about his name, his Torah.
From this verse.
From this verse, we know only that the divine presence rests among two people who discuss Torah. From where do we know that if even one person sits by himself and occupies himself with Torah, the Holy One, blessed be he, sets a reward for him? From a verse in Lamentations where it says, let him sit alone and study Torah quietly, because for doing so he can take a reward for himself.
Awesome. Awesome. So a lot going on. I'm going to zoom out a little bit just so that I think the whole Mishnah could be included. I hope that's okay for everyone. This is the whole Mishnah. I'll give everyone a moment to read it, to review it quietly. I would love to hear if you have anything to add on it. But while you're reviewing it, I'll just give you a little bit of the background. I want to go on the second person here. His name is Rabbi Chanina ben Teradion. Rabbi Chanina ben Teradion, he was one of the 10 martyrs, which means we read about him on Yom Kippur, about his tragic death. The Talmud, it's actually one of my favorite pages of the Talmud. It's Tractate of Avodah Zarah, page 17a. It actually describes his death. And obviously I don't enjoy reading that part, but a response that he gives during his death is one of the most fascinating lines I've ever heard. And I'll just share it with you. He was punished by the Romans for teaching Torah. He was a teacher of Torah. He was the greatest giant, right? He was one of the 10 martyrs. They took the elite, the rabbis, Rabbi Akiva, and his colleagues. Rabbi Chanina was one of them. How he died was, as a punishment, they wrapped the Torah around his body and they burnt him, with his students having to watch and his daughter having to watch. His daughter's name is actually a very famous one. I think Adina actually gave a class on his daughter. I think so. I forgot her name. Something with a B. Remind me.
Is it Bruria?
Yeah, Bruria. There you go. Bruria married Rab Meir, who was Rabbi Chanina's daughter, and Rab Meir became his son-in-law. So Bruria was there. Rabbi Chanina obviously was being burnt, and to prolong his death, they put a wet sponge on his heart. And while he was burning, the students who were forced to watch this, to see what happens to a person studying Torah, they asked him, "What do you see? Like, what do you see?" And he says, "I see." I love the words. I'll just say it in English, but it's powerful words. He says, "I see parchment burning and letters flying, letters soaring." What he was saying is they could burn our parchment, but the words of Torah will elevate and go high, and they can never touch the words of Torah. The words of Torah are beyond what's just written in the scroll, in the book. It's just a powerful reminder that what a Jew is, it's beyond a brick and mortar building of a synagogue or a prayer book. It's something we take with us. The words are part of us, and no one can take that away from us, and no one can burn it. Anyway, the Talmud continues with some fascinating stories about his son-in-law, Rab Meir, and it's really some of the coolest stories. But let's just try to stick to the text. So the first person in this Mishnah, his name is Rabbi Chanina. It's interesting, the English is a little bit of a minor difference than the Hebrew. And I'll just tell you, it's such a minor difference. A Kohen in Hebrew is a Kohen, a priest who was the representative of the Jews. Kohanim, which is over here in the Hebrew, is the plural, which means many priests. He was the assistant of many high priests. It's just, in the English, it actually just says it in the singular of the high priest, but in the Hebrew, it's actually worded in the plural. And the reason why there was many high Kohen Gadols, which were the high official, that went through his tenure as the assistant, because he was after the story of Hanukkah, which was an amazing story, the Chashmonayim, which were that Matisyahu's lineage, he died, the Maccabees died, after the story of Hanukkah. Their family that took over weren't honest in the path of Torah. And they kind of bought their way in to be the Kohen Gadols, even though they were undeserving of it. So as the law is, the Kohen Gadol goes in on Yom Kippur, but he has to be worthy to come out. Those Kohen Gadols who bought their way in, unfortunately, weren't worthy and they actually died. So he was actually the assistant of many Kohen Gadols, because every year there was a new one that was put in place, and they would die by Yom Kippur. Like they didn't get it. So that's why it's actually here in the plural. But the lesson, I think, is almost contradictory to last week's. I think it was last week we learned a mission that said, don't trust in the government. They're only there for their benefit, but they don't stand on your side when you need them. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but we learned that last week together. Over here, it's saying, pray for the government's well-being. Because if not for them, even if they're not the best government, if not for them, which would, let's say, be anarchy, the world would be a much worse place. And he actually gives the expression of swallowing each other. People would be swallowing. Just like in a fish, different size fish, the bigger fish swallows the smaller fish. If there's no government, the bigger bully would just swallow the smaller person. Government allows for everyone to have a say, or everyone to be somewhat equal, hopefully. So even if they're not the best government, you should still pray for their well-being. And many synagogues have the custom by the Torah to pray for Israel, and to pray for our country and our military and our president. And that varies. Not every synagogue does that, but I think that's the lesson learned from this Mishnah, which is to pray for your government. Okay, and the next part is basically saying, when you're together with someone else, you should find a way to include words of Torah. It doesn't have to be a fully religious setting, but find a way to discuss a Torah between them. And I just have footnote 1, and it just not just be kept to yourself. The divine presence does not rest among people who lack the humility to learn with others. Wow, interesting. So I guess a person has to be a little bit more humbled to be able to learn with someone, to listen to someone else, share their thoughts. So the Rebbe is learning a lesson of humility that has to be between them with someone else. Interesting. Okay. I do hear feedback from someone. Let's see where that's coming from. Hold on, everyone. Sorry for the delay. No, that's not it. Okay. I can't find it. Does anyone have any comments to add on this Mishnah? Okay, so the last part I just love. Sometimes a person feels, what's the point of learning on my own? I should be learning with someone else. Sometimes we don't have someone else to learn with, and just learning on your own is, you have rewards set for you, and it's a lofty thing, and it's very virtuous. It's a very holy thing to be able to have that discipline, to sit down on your own. No one's watching you, no one's looking at you. You're just studying Torah. It's you and God. I think that's a very powerful lesson to learn.
Rabbi, I noticed when we're showing the footnotes, they kind of took a different take on the reason why one did that.
Oh, please share which one.
Number 3.
Do you mind reading it out loud?
Sure.
I could zoom in if.
It's okay, I can see it. Torah study should be an enjoyable experience, but there are times when a person feels he's too busy for it. At these times, one must remember that Torah study is also an obligation.
So even when it's not so enjoyable, you still stick to it. Where is that?
I think he's saying, sometimes we think our life is too, we have too many things going on in our life to take time out to study. And I think the Rebbe is saying that if you feel like that, you still need to study, even if it's on your own.
Nice. I'm just trying to see, where does that 3 go to in the text? Where do you see a footnote 3? Like, I see the footnote that you read, but where would that lesson be coming from? What line does the Rebbe learn that from?
From Lamentations.
From Lamentations.
Yeah.
From a verse in Lamentations. So I don't see a 3 there, but okay, where it says, let him sit alone. Oh, you're just saying from that verse. Got it. Okay.
It fits in there.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tessa. Oh, Vivian found it on the next page. Okay, cool. We'll get there. All right, but I agree with you also, Tessa, that does make sense. Okay, let's carry on. Continue to the next Mishnah. The next Mishnah is a little long. It has a lot of verses. Actually, no, not that many verses, but let's try to add it in. Fred, are you comfortable to read?
Well, if it's a long one, I'll give it to Tessa.
No, it's actually a pretty short one.
Short one I would do.
Let me zoom in. It's going to
Can I
cross
ask you
over.
a question?
Oh, sure. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Go ahead.
Does it count as words of Torah, saying the after blessing if you have mazonis or anything?
You know, that's a good question. I don't think so. I think that's considered a prayer. When you do a after blessing or a before blessing, that's counted as a prayer. Over here, it seems to be saying specifically a Torah, a word of Torah, as I understand it.
Uh-huh.
It's like more the study
if
of
you're
Torah.
alone, if you're eating by yourself, how do you you study Torah while you're eating, or what does it mean?
So far, and Marcia, you're asking a good question. I don't think we actually spoke about when you're eating, right? That's the next mission, which we didn't get to.
At a table, 3 at a table or 1 alone.
Yeah, we didn't get to that. So let's ask that question when we.
Okay. I thought we did.
Mishnah 3 talks about if 3 people are eating, 2 people are eating, right? So let's see it inside first, and then we'll take that question.
If 3 people ate together at the same table and did not speak words of Torah, we're okay?
Yeah.
And did not speak words of Torah upon it, it is as if they ate from sacrifices offered to idols and are made of dead.
Ooh.
What?
That are made of dead physical material.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, dear.
Yeah, wow.
It says in Isaiah, I'm out now.
Yes, I'll just scroll down. You want to read? If a meal, I'm just gonna.
Yeah. If a meal consists only of physical pleasure and there is no mention of God, then all the tables are filled with vomit and waste.
Wow.
Oy vey.
But if 3 people ate at the same table and spoke words of Torah upon it, it is as if they ate from God's table, as it says in Ezekiel regarding the golden table in the holy temple. And he said to me, this is the table that is before the Lord. Any table upon which words of God's Torah are spoken is considered God's table.
Beautiful. Okay. A little heavy on that Mishnah. Does anyone have anything to share on it?
Well, just off the top of my head, I think it's interesting that they mentioned 3 people, and you have to have 3 men in the Orthodox world to do
Interesting.
Birkat, with the zmunim and all that kind of stuff.
I like that. Interesting. Let me see in the commentary if he mentions anything about that. Interesting. On the bottom, he gives a little bit more of a spiritual teaching. It's interesting. 2 things interesting. So the author of this mission is Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Whenever it says Rabbi Shimon, it's actually referring to the greatest Rabbi Shimon, who was the celebration that we have on Lag BaOmer coming up in 10 days. It's all about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who authored spiritual mysticism, right? The Kabbalah, the book of the Zohar. A long story, and we'll save that for Lag BaOmer. But for 13 years, Rabbi Shimon was stuck in a cave with his son. He was hiding from the Romans. He was stuck in a cave. It was just him and his son. So when he came out of the cave, he recited this Mishnah, appreciating to having a 3rd person present. It was 13 years since he was able to discuss it with more than one other person. So he was desperate. I don't know if that's the right word, but he was appreciating having 3 people together at a table to discuss Torah. So he was saying, don't underestimate the value of having that 3rd person there to study Torah together with. And one other thing the Rebbe shares, that was from the Rebbe, and one other thing, even if a person is alone at a table, there's really 3 energies present. There's their body that's enjoying the food. There's a soul that's more enjoying the spiritual part, the Torah teachings. But then your job is to make a unification between the body and the soul. When the body eats with inspiration and awareness of the soul, you're actually elevating the body. You're elevating the food that you ate. So it's really a combination of 3 energies, the body, the soul, and the uniting of the body and the soul. Okay. Tessa, you want to read the next one?
Rabbi Hanina ben
Chachinai. That's a tongue twister.
Chachinai says, one who stays awake at night or one who travels alone on a road and turns his heart to worthless things instead of thinking about Torah is responsible for anything bad that happens to him, because studying Torah would have helped protect him from danger.
It seems like there ought to be a second half of that about one who then studies Torah on the road. What happens to him?
Yeah, this one is a tough one for me, Rabbi, because I don't mean this in any way to be questioning the wisdom of this, but I need some unpacking myself as a student, because it invokes a fairy tale sort of an image of a person walking along the road and bad things happen because he did the wrong thing. Or I guess I need some unpacking as to, because studying the Torah would have helped protect him from danger. I hope you help me with that a little.
Rabbi, the translation in the book, in our Pirkei avot, it's in our Siddur, is a little different. And it says, one who stays awake at night, or one who travels alone and turns his thoughts to trivial matters, endangers his life. So when you read it that way, it's like if you're not paying attention to what's going on around you, if you're driving a car and you're texting, God forbid you could have an accident. So and these were dangerous times when people traveled at night and alone. So you had to be vigilant.
You're right. And actually thank you, Tessa, the comment, and Jolie, I don't know if that's fully answering, sorry, we still need to unpack it. But what Tessa is saying, actually, I'm looking at a commentary in my Mishnah book over here, and he actually says what Tessa is saying, which is when a lone traveler is trying to study Torah, he takes the risk of losing his way. He has to be focused. If he was with people, then there could be one person navigating, one person directing, and then he could study Torah. But if you're by yourself, you're putting your life in risk by not being focused. So I guess you shouldn't be it might also be in the olden days, you shouldn't be traveling alone because it was more dangerous traveling at night. By the way, I don't know if you know this, but on Friday night, we have Kabbalah Shabbat, we have Arvit Ma'ariv. It's actually pretty short, but at the end of the Amida, we actually add an extra section, which is a mini Amida. We say Magen Avot. It wasn't supposed to be part of the prayer. They added an extra 5 minutes of prayer because they were worried of people that were catching up because they came late, as we Jews like to do sometimes. And because they're going to be late, there's not up to everyone else that's finishing off because they're still in middle. So the worry is that they would be left praying alone. Then they would have to leave the synagogue and walk home alone. And that could be dangerous. In the olden days, walking home alone at night meant danger. And therefore, they actually added an extension to the prayer so that it gives time for those people to catch up. So there is something said, just in practical terms, of traveling alone in the dark of night. But I do agree also with the commentary, Tessa, that you literally hit spot on, that you have to be focused on the drive or on the travel and not be distracted. But let's see, Jolie, I mean, you asked the question, so how would you begin interpreting it? How would you understand this Mishnah?
Yeah, actually listening to you and Tessa is very helpful because it's such a spare words. I couldn't figure out how magically the Torah would have helped protect him from danger, but that's not what it's saying. It's a much more practical approach, and you have to take it in the context of the times and also context of Judaism. We're not really into magical. Right. We're very much into applicable action.
So Jolie, I do want to go back to what you said before, because there are many layers, and like you were telling me after the first class, every line you could learn it over and over again and understand it differently. So the way I actually understood it before Tessa and I got to peek into the commentary, I did understand it practically, which is Torah would protect you. You should be studying Torah. You're responsible to anything that happens if you're not studying Torah. The reason why that hits a raw nerve is because that is a thing in Judaism. It's called shliach mitzvah eino nizaken. A messenger of a mitzvah doesn't get hurt, which simply what we do when people are traveling, we always like to give them $1 or $5. And we tell them, give it to charity when you get there, so that you become an ambassador of a mitzvah. So, quote unquote, you're protected because you're on the mission of a mitzvah. So what bad could happen to you when you're on the path of a mitzvah? And I think that's similar to what he's saying is you should be involved in Torah, and that would protect you. The reason why that hits a raw nerve is, unfortunately, too many times we have a question of someone who's in the middle of doing a mitzvah and they get hurt. They just what happened to a friend of mine's father. 3 days before Passover, he was in Brooklyn delivering matzah, and he was crossing a street. He was a man in his 60s, crossing a street to deliver matzah, and someone didn't see him and ran him over and killed him. My friend's father, they just had his shloshim. It was tragic. It was tragic. It shook me so hard. And the question everyone was asking is, he was on the way to do a mitzvah. He had matzah in his hand, and his mission was to make sure as many acquaintances he knows has matzah. How was that able to happen? So I just heard someone share, like, that's one perspective. Another one is he passed away in the middle of doing a mitzvah. I don't have the full answers, and Jolie, I don't think it's answering your question. I'm just continuing the discussion of, I would love if you have an answer for that magical part of understanding this Mishnah. I don't know.
So I have one slightly different translation as well.
Yeah.
For the second verse, it says, after he travels alone on the road, but turns one's mind to idleness, indeed bears guilt for one's soul.
Nice. I like that. I'll share also just one more. And now it's actually getting dark outside, so it works. This is about staying awake at night. And the deeper mystical teaching of this Mishnah is night is a symbol of darkness, like not just darkness from the darkness of night, but it's a spiritual darkness. When you're feeling night, when you're feeling sunshine, is this time of brightness and glow and teaching and expansion. Darkness is the idea of being fetched and feeling fearful and feeling anxious and feeling alone. If someone stays awake at night, which means they see the world in a place of darkness, but what happens is they get used to it, and they're like, I could travel through this alone. I don't need to help anyone else in their darkness. I could light up my own way, and I'm fine with it. What I mean by that is, one of my favorite stories that I share occasionally on Yom Kippur is about Farbrengen. Farbrengen is a Hasidic gathering that took place 50 years ago in Russia, in a time when it was illegal, punishable by 5 years in Siberia to have anything religious. And there was Hasidim who were desperate for a Farbrengen. A Farbrengen is a time when you get together, inspire each other, say some l'chaim to break through a barrier, and really connect on a spiritual level to encourage, to motivate each other. And so these Hasidim invited each other for a Farbrengen. It was a very clandestine, secretive Farbrengen. And it was dark. It was in a cellar, and there was no lights on because they didn't want anyone to catch them. So one of the friends came late to the Farbrengen, and it was so dark he couldn't even see. He opened the door and he couldn't even see like a foot in front of him. So everyone who was present told him, don't worry, the dark seems dark now, but give it a few minutes, it's going to brighten up. Your eyes adjust to the dark, and you get used to it. So it may seem dark for you now, but you'll get used to it, and you'll be able to see us. And that itself, they were able to farbring, they were able to inspire each other the whole night. That sometimes it's dark outside, but what we do is we adjust to it. We're like, okay, this is the new norm. This is what I could see. And you get used to it. You become stuck in a status quo. And the Chassidim are saying we can never be satisfied with our prayer. We can never be satisfied with our avot Yisrael, love for another. We can never be satisfied with the amount of study of Torah we're doing. We always have to increase. We can never stay stuck in the darkness. So over here, the spiritual teaching of Rabbi Hanina is saying it's night outside, but he's saying, I'm going to be alone. I don't need to take care of anyone else's darkness. I'm lighting up for myself. Then he's responsible for that decision. A person has to realize they always need to be there to share and to help with someone else. I put on tefillin with someone earlier today, and if it's someone who hasn't put on tefillin in a while, I like to explain why we're doing it, what we're doing. So one of the things that a lot of people don't know is when we do the tefillin, the tricky part is there's a specific way of how we wrap the tefillin around our hand. It starts by our arm, and then we wrap the tefillin all the way till our finger, our middle finger actually. And Sephardim and Ashkenazim have different customs exactly how the wrap goes. But either way, everyone agrees that you put it around your middle finger. And the reason is because the middle finger is actually the longest extremity of your body. It's the farthest you could reach. And the reminder is that when you're feeling bright inside, when you're feeling a mitzvah, when you're feeling inspired by the tefillin or by whatever other mitzvah you're doing, you have to tie it up on your middle finger and reach out to remember that the inspiration can't share inside, it can't remain inside. The inspiration, the teaching, the wisdom needs to be imparted or shared with another. And the darkness outside, you can't be okay with it because by you're okay. You need to make sure you're reaching out and you're helping another person. And the Rebbe's first talk in January 1951, he shared this thing, that if you know Aleph, your job is to go out to the streets and teach Aleph. You may not know a lot, but whatever you know, you have to be outside and teach it. You have to bring light to the place of darkness. Okay.
Rabbi, I did see one more tiny thing really quickly while you're scrolling in Mishnah 4. In our fancy book, it says, under these circumstances, talking about that will protect you. Under these circumstances, the obligation to study Torah is greatly increased, since one has no disturbances, I guess at night when you're alone. Furthermore, these circumstances present spiritual and physical dangers and therefore require Torah study as a form of protection.
So what's spiritual danger? Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
The protection is spiritual protection. It's making decisions. It's which way to go. It's how to manage life. So it's obviously a bigger picture than just magical powers will protect you.
I love that. I think that's so powerful that, and we're going to get to it in chapter 5 where it says, Hafachba v'hafachba dekulaba. If you need answers for anything in the world, turn over the Mishnah, turn over the Torah, you'll find it all in there. The Torah is encompassing everything. So if you need spiritual guidance, look in the Torah, you'll find an answer. You may need a help of a teacher or a mentor to dissect it and understand it, but that's beautiful. I like, so what's the spiritual danger at night? How would you understand, or just the darkness around us? How would you understand the spiritual danger that Torah protects us from?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
I would say fear, terror, unknown, indecisiveness.
And does that make sense that it's more at night than by day, or it's more of a spiritual night? Okay, got it.
Yeah, I think it happens more at night. Doubt and concerns and worries.
Beautiful. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Jolie. That was beautiful. I'm going to switch now to Vivian. I hope everyone could hear Vivian. Hold on, sorry, Vivian. All right, let's try it. Let me just see you on the screen. Perfect. Go for it.
So the fourth one.
The fifth one, I think. Yeah.
Rabbi Nathaniah ben Hakana says, whoever accepts upon himself the yoke of learning and supporting Torah.
We can't hear.
Oh.
Okay.
Ooh, hold on.
That's okay, then read.
Okay, sorry about that. Sorry, everyone. Let's put this back. Sorry, good. There we go.
You can get a remote microphone.
We actually have one.
Okay.
But then I'm scared you're whatever. The rabbi never went to tech school, so I'm going to stick to the Torah and we'll make it work. All right, Cheryl, we're up to you. Mishnah 5. Let me zoom in a little bit.
Muted.
Oh, sorry, Cheryl. Yeah, you have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Hold on a second. I have to. Okay. Rabbi Nehunya ben Hakana says, whoever accepts upon himself the yoke of learning and supporting Torah, God removes the yoke and oppression of government and the yoke and worry of worldly affairs from him. Whoever removes the yoke of Torah from himself, God places the yoke of government and the yoke of worldly affairs upon him.
Interesting.
I don't get it. So accept the yoke of learning and Torah. Do you want me to keep reading?
No, I want to try to understand this one. We'll let the scholars weigh in. Does anyone have anything?
Yeah, basically, say much like Bob Dylan said in his song, you have to serve somebody, and you're either going to be serving, it's either going to be the yoke of heaven which you'll be serving God, or you're going to be, if it's not God, it's going to be something else. And in this case, Rab Nechunya ben Hakana says it'll be the yoke of government and worldly affairs, but you're going to serve somebody.
So I like that, Howard, because I was learning it. What it's saying is, if you take upon yourself Torah, God may take care of the rest that it should be done for you. But if you're not busy with Torah, God's going to put the other one. I like your way of saying it specifically. I guess it's similar, but you could choose, and you have to serve somebody, serve God, and the yoke of affairs of the world will be taken away from you. I like that.
But Rabbi, if you look at the word yoke,
yes,
as weighing you down, in Torah, it's when you accept the yoke of learning and Torah, that even though that's a heavy responsibility, by doing that, it's like you're removing the yoke of government. You can handle the harshness of what the government is doing to you. Because I'm sure when this was written, the Romans were not being very kind to the Jewish people and to the rabbis. So I think this is a political response to the time.
Beautiful. I love it. I love it. So the yoke, oh, sorry, Peter, were you going to share?
No problem. I can wait till you finish.
No, I'd much rather hear what you say.
Okay. I should have asked this a long time ago, but I find a lot of what we're reading to be a little bit on the complicated side to understand. And I wonder why that is, or am I just too dense to
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think that's kind of the beauty of this specific chapters of Mishnah, the Pirkei Avot, where it's actually a little bit up for interpretation, which is what I love about it, where we all give our perspective of we have a framework where we're trying to dissect Rabbi Nechunya, but we could all understand it in a specific way. Like Tessa's doing, focus on the yoke part. The yoke is something that's burdening you, and it'll be removed from you when you have Torah. I do see what you're saying. It is a little bit, it's packed. I think that's the word. It's packed, and our job is to try and unpack it. And there's 70 dimensions of how to learn each Mishnah. That's how there's 70 faces to the Torah is the expression. And really, we could sit all night on one Mishnah and try to understand different parts. And I think I don't know if I mentioned this, maybe I just said it to Jolie, but I've been studying Pirkei Avot every year since I was a teenager. And I just love restudying it because I always see something differently. I always hear from someone or just from my heart a new way of studying the same Mishnah. But I think that's part of the beauty, Peter, where it is a little bit I think it's just vague. And it allows you to try to dissect it.
I think I understand now why it takes a lifetime.
Yep, exactly. So God willing, that's why we need 120 years. Debbie, I would love to hear what you have to share.
Rabbi Yanklowitz has a really good commentary about this paragraph, right about this verse. He says, in a life suffused with meaning, one strives to achieve balance. Being involved with community, going to school, raising a family, enjoying precious moments away from work, engaging with friends, contributing to society, growing spiritually, all must be balanced. No one can give full attention to every facet of life, so we make hard choices. This Mishnah says that we must be firmly planted somewhere. At times, this is in Torah and Jewish communal life. At times, this means larger societal undertakings. We don't have to feel guilt when we prioritize where to focus our attention if we are fully committed to the vision of a more just society.
I love it. Actually, Adina and I were just having this discussion yesterday. I'm blessed with an amazing wife, and somehow she manages everything and doing all of it well. Like she feeds her family, and it's amazing dinners, but she has a coaching job on the side. She's an amazing rebbitzin to the community, and how she does it all, I have no idea. But she told me she focuses on what she's doing now. She gives her full attention to, and she doesn't feel guilty that she's not putting her attention somewhere else. She's fully focused. So I think that's beautiful. And actually, Tessa, just going back on this Mishnah, I'm peeking on the commentary here of one of the greatest Hasidic masters. I love his teachings, and he says something I think similar or along the lines of what you were saying. His name was Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kutsk. His name was actually, Kutsk was the town that he was in. His name was actually Menachem Mendel Mermelstein was his name. I think he lived in the late 1800s. I think he died somewhere around there. I don't exactly know the year, but he says a beautiful teaching. He's like, what is this Mishnah talking about? We learned in Pirkei Avot that a person shouldn't just say, I'm only going to study Torah. You should always have a profession. You shouldn't rely on Torah for your bread. You should have a profession. The greatest teachers of the Torah, of the Talmud, had a side job. Rab Huna was a wood chopper. Hillel also. Every great teacher, one of them was a fishmonger. One of them was a baker. And they would make their money they need to survive. And then they would go study and learn, teach Torah. So why over here is saying just focus on Torah and the yoke of worldly affairs will be removed from you? On the contrary, you should be involved in worldly affairs. So he says, when you learn Torah and you really put yourself in the Torah study, you become uplifted. You become uplifted and inspired through the Torah, that even when you have your job, and you should have a job, it doesn't feel like a burden. It doesn't feel like a yoke. So you're still working, but it's not a burden like a yoke, like Tessa was saying, a heaviness that's on your shoulders. You're uplifted to the point where even your job is taking on an uplifted or inspired take of it. Yes, Cheryl.
One of the things that comes to me is that in the study of Torah, when you then go out into the world to earn your living or whatever else you're doing, you're sharing that information oftentimes with people. So you're elevating in the world God's teachings as well.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you, Cheryl. That's right on. Thank you.
Rabbi,
yeah, of course.
The contradictions in Pirkei Avot are many. And this last few conversations brought me to in Kemach in Torah.
Yes, exactly.
Mishnah.
Well, can you translate what that means just to make sure we're on the same page?
If you don't have bread, you're hungry, you can't study. But if you don't study, then there won't be any bread. Right. In Kemach in Torah. But there was another piece that struck me here also. When the state of Israel was founded, the rabbis convinced Ben Gurion that we needed to have some people studying Torah on a full-time basis to bring down the Shekhinah, to protect Israel, whatever. And it's still going today, although it's multiplied into thousands instead of 36, whatever.
And why 30? Are you saying because of the 36 tzaddikim?
Well, I'm guessing that's where they started out with the number. I don't know if they stuck to that.
I think it's the secret to success to have people that are designated to study Torah, but not for the rest of their life, for their youth, when they have the time and they don't have the family responsibilities. So we're not going to get political. But by the way, just talking about Israel, our neighbor across the street, it's so cool. Our neighbor is not Jewish. His name is Phil. We got a use permit for our building. Our beautiful Chabad. And he's not a mean guy, but he was, people moving in, and they're going to park around his house. So he objected a little bit, but thank God it passed and we got our use permit. So after we bought the building, I went over, it was Purim time. So I went over with Hamantashen and Challah, and just to be neighborly and friendly. And he's not Jewish, nice guy. We had a nice conversation. Then Jolie is coming for a class 2 weeks ago, and the guy put up an Israeli flag outside, right outside his building. There's an Israeli flag flying proudly from a non-Jewish home, and I think that's so cool.
When I told the rabbi, I said, Rabbi, because it was pitch dark, I said, Rabbi, did you see the Israeli flag flying on the house next door? He said, no, there's no Israeli flag flying there. I said, there is. Check tomorrow. It was like the weirdest thing out of the blue.
Very cool.
Rabbi,
okay. Yes.
I'd like to continue something that Cheryl said.
Sure.
About bringing Torah teaching into the world. When you go into the world and you have a Torah education, it is giving you a blueprint how to lead your life ethically, and then others see you leading your life ethically as well. So not only are you teaching it, but you are setting an example at the same time.
Beautiful. I love it. Very nice.
I look forward to hearing why he's flying that flag.
So actually, I went over yesterday to find out. I told Jolie I was going to go, so I made my way. I trucked over. It's a little hard. He's up a hill, and I don't like doing exercise, so I had to it took me a little bit of. It's up a little hill, but anyway, I went there, and they explained that they're in the international business of selling liquor. So they have a bunch of flags. So they decided now they're going to put up the Israeli flag. So I said, "How long is it going to be up?" He's like, "It'll be here for a while."
Remember what I said?
Very nice.
Was visiting.
It's very nice.
Oh yeah, Ken, what did you say?
I said you should send him a card and say, "Those that bless us will be blessed, and those that curse us will be cursed."
Right, from the Torah. That's a beautiful verse.
And maybe
Ken,
he'll give a little discount on the schnapps.
Maybe we'll give him some business. We'll work it out together.
And Ken, this must be a really good class that it's already night and you're still awake. That's pretty good.
I'm pinching myself. I arise early to study, to daven before dawn, and I've had to look at the time when I can start, but I found that even on the shortest day, I can start davening at 6 a.m.
Okay.
So
Mishnah 6. It's a little bit of a long one. Jolie, we're going for you. You're next on my screen. And go for it.
Rabbi Chalafta ben Dosa from Kafar, Hananiah?
Yeah, Hananiah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, how do you say it?
Hananiah.
Thank you. Hananiah says, if 10 people sit and are involved in Torah learning, the divine presence rests among them. As it says in Psalms, God stands in the congregation of God. The divine presence rests among 10 people, a congregation, when they learn Torah. From where do we know that the divine presence rests even among 5 people who learn Torah together? From a verse in Avot where it says, God established his bundle on the earth and he rests upon it. A bundle carried with 5 fingers of the hand corresponds to, we'll need to scroll up a little bit, corresponds to 5 people who learn Torah together. From where do we know that the divine presence rests even among 3 people who learn Torah together? From a verse in Psalms where it says, God sits among the 3 judges of a court and makes his own judgment. From where do we know that the divine presence rests even upon 2 people who learn Torah together? From a verse in Malachi where it says, then the people who fear the Lord spoke to each other and the Lord paid attention and heard. From where do we know that the divine presence rests upon even 1 person who learns Torah? From the Torah, where it says, in any place where I have given you permission to mention my name, if you mention it, I will come to you and bless you.
It's beautiful. It's actually a long Mishnah, but, and thank you, Jolie, for saying it so eloquently. Just the ending for me is beautiful, where you're studying yourself. You should know that Hashem is right there with you, studying with you, right there. He's your study partner. A person should never feel lonely.
That's nice.
I love it.
Rabbi Land, I like that. And we're talking a lot about learning Torah and speaking of Torah. This is a very basic question, but does Pirkei avot come in the category of Torah learning?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's
part
of the mission.
That because there are some things that are really hard to focus on, like there are the sacrificial laws and the leprosy type diseases. But Pirkei avot is just so everyday practical. I really like learning it.
Yeah, and you just need the right teacher. But even the laws of leprosy or sacrifices, they should have a lot of deeper meanings of how we understand it. But you're right. This is just something so beautiful to read and apply. I definitely agree.
Yeah.
Okay, the next mission actually has a lot of heavy stuff we're going to have to try to unpack about charity and some other things. It's a little bit heavy. And for that, we'll go to Sandra. We have you next on the screen.
Okay. Rabbi Elazar of Bartola says, when you serve God, give him from what comes from him. For example, serve him by spending money on commandments or giving generously to charity, because you and everything that you own really belong to him. That is what King David says, everything comes from you, God, and everything that we give you is originally from your hand. Rabbi Yaakov says, someone who walks in the street and studies Torah by heart and interrupts his study, even to admire God's beautiful world and say, how beautiful is this tree, how beautiful is this plowed field, is considered by the Torah as if he has committed a sin for which he would deserve to lose his life.
Oh, okay. So the first, there's definitely, we have to unpack the second teaching of Sandra, Rabbi Lazar, I should say. But let's just focus on the first one for a moment. I actually love the first teaching, not because I'm in the charity world and we rely on people's generosity, but it's just this beautiful thing. And I'm surrounded by such, I'm inspired. I spoke to someone today that came to visit the building and going through a tough time. We had a beautiful chat, but he was so proud of of making it in the world. He came from a poor home and he moved to the West Coast and he made a small fortune. But he didn't take all the credit. He's like, this is all from God. Like he saw the blessing in his hands, and he doesn't take it for granted. And he realizes that it's meant as a gift that I should be applying and giving charity, which is just a beautiful way. I went a couple of years ago, I was at the Chabad Rabbi Conference in New York, and God willing, after COVID and things open up, I'm so eager to bring men with me, and Adina so eager to bring ladies to the beautiful convention in New York. But one of the people that spoke, his name is George Rohr, and he's a philanthropist to many Jewish causes, and to Chabad in Russia, to Chabad on campus. He's just a very generous person. And he once gave a talk of what inspires a donor to give. And someone asked him, like what should we tell people to inspire them to give? He's like, take out a Torah, read them the verse that says that you should give 10%. It's a Torah in the book of Deuteronomy. It says you should tithe. So the rabbi is like, okay, but what else could I say? It was funny to hear him. But the philanthropist, his name is George Rohr, he said, well, the way I look at it is Hashem, there's a pot. Hashem wants 10% of the wealth to remain in the principal, to remain in the pot, and he lets me do whatever I want with 90% of it. But 10% has to remain in the, I don't know if it's called the capital or has to remain. And as long as that 10% is remaining, I have the choice of the 90%. So all you have to do is inspire them that you should be on their list for the 10%. I just found it to be very inspiring. And over here, it's almost the perspective. Like I was saying thank you to someone who gave to our recent campaign, and we actually have helpers in saying thank you to people. It's been beautiful. And one of the ladies, she doesn't want to hear thank you because she's like, it's not my money, it's God's money. Why are you saying thank you to me? And really, like the way we're starting off here is give him from what comes from him, because you and everything that you own really belong to him. Over here, it's saying it's not even your money. So like the lady who said, don't thank me, but like I appreciate it, and I still have to thank her, and I because she still has a free choice and she still chose to give. But it's saying like, I have to give it. It's not mine, it's God's. And it's an interesting perspective. Over here is saying not only on charity, but even on a mitzvah. Your menorah could be at $2.99, or your menorah could be $25, or even more beautiful, your Kiddush cup, your esrog. I don't know if you're aware, but people go all out on their esrog. Some people go a little bit too extravagant, but everyone has their level. But it's the idea where I'm not going to go all out on a car. I'm going to go all out on a mitzvah. It's a beautiful perspective where that's why Hashem gave me the money. I just appreciate a perspective that is this way. Okay, now the second part of Rabbi Yaakov. Does anyone have, Vivian, do you see any commentaries on the bottom that explain it? Footnote 3 maybe? 2 and 3? Let's see. Torah is the source of life for a Jew. When one forgets his learning, it's like losing a life. So it's not as if he's punishable by death. If it's okay with everyone, I'm just going to read footnote 2, which is talking about how beautiful is this plowed field. So footnote 2 from the Maggid of Mezrich. His name was Rabbi David Friedman. He was the second Hasidic Rebbe. He was the successor of the Baal Shem Tov. He passed away in 1772. And he says like this: alternatively, one who interrupts because of his learning. Oh, because of his learning. That's how he's understanding it. Part of serving God is eliminating the ego. One who interrupts his learning because of his learning, in order to look back and admire his academic accomplishments, is considered to have transgressed a capital sin, because by undermining the true purpose of Torah study, he is disconnecting himself from God, the source of life. The whole purpose of study is to connect yourself closer with God. When you're looking back at your study and you're saying, wow, how beautiful is this plowed field, which the way this Rebbe is understanding it, is talking about this field of Torah that I built that I'm planting. When you're looking back at your accomplishments and patting yourself, you're allowing your ego to get the better of you, and that's disconnecting you with Hashem. It's an interesting, I like that teaching. Anyone have anything else to share on it?
You know, Rabbi, it's a beautiful teaching, but it's a teaching that is moving far away from the pshat of the verse. You know, I kind of look at, we say in our morning prayers, you know, Magalu Ma'asecha Hashem, recognizing beautiful fields in the pshat of what this is being saying seems like something that we are being encouraged to do through the rabbis. So this to me is problematic unless you choose to interpret it like apparently the Maggid of Mezrich did, where he's using plowed field as a what's the word I want? Not a simile,
a metaphor.
A metaphor. Thank you for Torah study, and maybe that is what he meant. I don't know, but I think recognizing the beauty of God's works as we see them is also an important part of Torah.
And I mean, part of the beauty of where we live is you could connect with God anywhere. You could be almost stuck in traffic and still be inspired by looking at the beautiful mountains. And for sure, when you're on a hike, I agree with you. And I think some of the greatest Hasidic Rebbes, the Baal Shem Tov, he is known to go out to the forest and connect with God through nature. So this certainly can't be contradicting it. I don't know how, Howard, because you have a good point there. It seems to be saying you shouldn't stop your Torah study to look and admire nature. We have to understand the deeper meaning. I don't know it offhand, but it's something we should work on.
The word is interrupt. I'm sorry. What is the Hebrew word for that's supposed to be interrupt?
Yeah, it's umafsik.
And what does that mean? What's a pure translation of that word?
Yeah, I think mafsik would mean stops, right? Interrupts.
It has to do with stopping Torah study. It doesn't have to do with including the appreciation.
Right.
Well, it sounds like the way you were describing what the Baal Shem Tov did, enjoying nature and being out there, that was a separate activity from Torah study. So it does look like it's interrupting the study. That's the point. Of course, we're supposed to enjoy everything that God has given us, including the beauty that we see around us. Without it being a distraction from the Torah study.
To get totally distracted from where we were, like the beginning of the what is it called? The Omer. Right. It says, stay focused on your goal. What's your goal here? Yes, you're out in nature. You can appreciate it as you go along, but don't get distracted from the goal.
Wow. Nice, Cheryl. Nice, Cheryl. I like that. Wow. Well said. I like that.
I can share some commentary.
Sure.
One particularly transcendent, I can't say it, transcendent Midrash taught that God used the Torah physically and conceptually as a blueprint for the creation of the world, and that Torah preceded physical creation. This is neither temporal explanation nor scientific theory, but a lesson about priorities. It tells us that in Judaism, ethics precedes nature. Purpose preceded content. In this Mishnah, ethical and spiritual duties precede our encounter with the natural world. Torah and science, related but distinct, are in service of one another. But we know that we choose the ought over the is. We embrace nature, but seek to transcend it. There's value in admiring beauty wherever we see it. That's like you were saying, Rabbi. Whether we admire a natural wonder or a piece of art, pausing for such aesthetic pleasure is rare in a society that floods our consciousness with images. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel taught that people should practice radical amazement and experience each moment with renewed excitement and gratitude. While the world offers plenty of beautiful vistas, rolling hills, and soaring seas, there are not enough to ensure spiritual fortitude.
Thank you. Very well said. Thank you, Debbie, very much. We're going to skip and do just one more, and then we're going to end the class with just Mishnah 9. Let's see. Ken, we still have you present. We may as well take advantage of it. Do you mind reading Mishnah 9?
Okay. Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa says, anyone whose fear of sin takes priority over his wisdom will last. But anyone whose wisdom takes priority over his fear of sin, his wisdom will not last.
So there's a lot. This is a very powerful Mishnah. And you're right, like Peter was saying, it probably needs to be unpacked a little. Let's just see what that footnote 4 is in. Fear of sin also refers to prayer, which instills the humility and fear of God that is necessary to make one's study endure. I like that. Okay, so let's try to understand this Mishnah from a practical sense. And of course, anyone could share however they would like. There's wisdom, Torah wisdom, that is so powerful, but a person who's just working on his academic study of Torah without the reverence of God, without the reminder that there's a Torah with God and the reverence, I guess over here is specifying fear of sin. It's not really fear of God. So I'm not sure.
Right. Fear of the retribution of God.
Yeah, that is a little heavy.
Wisdom is meaningless without a constructive purpose.
Yeah, okay, that's good. So the idea of, so Torah wisdom, I think this is a beautiful thing that I need to learn I need to remember this every day. And hopefully each of us have to work on this, where we don't just study Torah because it's a great study. It has to be with a foundation. The foundation is fear of sin. Sin doesn't just mean I'm scared of God. I don't think it just means I'm worried of God's retribution if I do something wrong. It's more the reverence, the respect. A child doesn't want to do something wrong, not because they're scared of their parent punishing them, but they love their parents so much and they respect their parents so much that they don't want to be doing something that they shouldn't be doing. So when we approach Torah with such an overwhelming love for God and respect, reverence, and awe, then your Torah will last, because you're not studying Torah for your sake. You're studying Torah because it's connecting you with God. It's plugging you into the deeper reservoir of wisdom, which is God. Then your wisdom will last. But if the main thing you're worried about is your wisdom and the fear of sin comes second, it doesn't last. And really, in terms of teachers of Torah, you can have geniuses of academia, of Talmud and teachers, but not necessarily are they people that you want to learn from, because they don't have that fear of sin. They don't practice what they necessarily preach. So for their wisdom to really stick and internalize and therefore share with others, I think it needs to be prefaced with fear of sin. Does anyone else have or agree or disagree, understand it differently or concur?
I'm wondering, Rabbi, about Torah Lishma.
Oh, yeah.
So how does this stack up against that concept, Torah for its own sake?
You say this doesn't, or this connects to that, or you're saying it contradicts that?
I'm not sure.
Continue. Well, tell me more. Tell me what's on your mind.
Torah Lishma is Torah for its own sake. I'm studying because that's what we're supposed to do. And this seems to say that you have to combine that with reverence for God, for thoughts of Hashem. And Torah Lishma doesn't say that.
But I think it's saying more than that. I think it says you have to approach your studies with a humility that this wisdom is not coming from you. God is giving you this wisdom.
Beautiful.
And if you study Torah for its own sake, it's not that you're just studying Torah, it's the approach.
I like that. No, that's perfect. That's a beautiful way to sink in this lesson for the class, where if that humility is your approach, then the Torah is really lishma, and it will last. I like that. I think we all need that reminder every time, because at the same time, Tessa, you need that humility, but you're almost putting that humility on the side to be able to really use your mind and really acknowledge your wisdom. And over here, it's just that you have to make sure that it doesn't get the better of you. That is always, there's the foundation of humility. So I like translating fear of sin as humility. I think that's really right. Thank you.
I agree, Rabbi, and I'm looking at this, just these few lines, and I think it's also there's an implication of arrogance here, being your fall from grace, as opposed to fear, awe, or respect of the possibility of sin. And when you lose that, you become arrogant and lose your way. That's, I mean, in a more down to earth kind of way to say it.
Nice. Nice.
I also think that there's a huge difference of being able to study Torah, let alone practice it, as a grown, mature adult than as a kid. And Rabbi, you said you've been studying Pirkei Avot since you were a teenager. I would be shocked if you said, I mean, when you study it today, if it doesn't mean something different to you than when you first started studying it as a teenager.
Actually, I'll tell you a secret, Debbie. I'll tell you a secret. As a 7-year-old, I actually would get the Pirkei Avot as a punishment. I would have to write some of these mishnahs like 60 times.
Oh, wow.
Well, right. I mean, so whether it's Pirkei Avot or Torah, but to be able to have the honor and the opportunity to study, for me now by choice, because this is what I want to be doing, then, you know, rather than as a kid and being forced to do it, is completely different.
Beautiful.
And being having the maturity of an adult, you have the ability to understand it, whereas you don't have that as a child.
Yeah, for sure. And you keep on maturing and developing your way of understanding with new layers. All right, we will end the class here before the rabbi turns into a pumpkin. And tomorrow, God willing, we have a Tanya class at 9:30 right here on the Zoom link. You're welcome to come in person also. Adina has a very popular Torah and Tea talking about Mashiach. Is it fantasy or reality? That is at 1 p.m. Stay tuned for a really cool email about Lag BaOmer. We're going to be doing a really fun barbecue. We're going to have live music and even a moon bounce if you guys are up for it. You could go up and down jumping. But it should be a lot of fun. That's in 10 days on April 30th. That's on a Thursday evening, a free barbecue. Come, enjoy. Okay, besides for that, have a great end to your week. Try to finish the chapter 3, and next week we'll be studying chapter 4. So, God willing.
Rabbi.
Great to see you all.
Rabbi.